they also have to create the environment for the teams, that they have a way of working, that they and an access to customers and data, so that they can actually run lots and lots of experiments. Suddenly we see that we're behind, or there's a competitive threat, and now we need to do a big reorganization or management. You're giving them a mandate or empowerment to actually suggest their own alternative solutions or come up with their own ideas.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Innovation Roots' video interview series. And today I have a very special guest with me, Joakim Sundén, and we will have some interesting discussion with him about successful organization redesign. And let me know a little bit about him to you all. He is a consultant with CRISP, which is a small Swedish consultancy featuring world-renowned product development experts who helped develop customer focused organizations. And from 2011 to 2017, he has worked as a senior agile coach at Spotify, where he was part of a team collaborating with the CTO to develop the company's approach to customer focused product development at scale. And this model later became world famous as the Spotify model of tribes, squads, chapters, and guilds. So it's interesting. It will be interesting to hear from him about this as well. Also, Joakim has written a book, co-authored a book, Kanban in Action, and really excited to have you with us, Joakim. How are you?
Oh, thank you. I'm fine, thanks. And it's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me, having me on your show.
Thank you. And to begin with the discussion, Joakim, what kind of gaps that you have seen which inspired you to author Kanban in Action book?
Yeah, right. So I think it's 10 years since the book came out in its first edition, and it was later published in a second edition, and it's been translated to Japanese and Chinese as well. But at the time, 10 years ago, it almost feels like a different life. But at the time, I was deep in the trenches, working with teams, trying to get them to improve. We were using Scrum and pair programming and TDD and all of that. And I was very inspired by Toyota and Lean. So I even went to Toyota headquarters in Japan in 2009 and met the chief engineer for Lexus and their IT department. And this got me thinking, how can we apply the one piece continuous flow of Toyota on software development practices? So you could say that we accidentally stumbled on the principles of Kanban without even knowing about it. This was the very early days where David Anderson would write his book. And I soon got into that community, but a lot of people at that time in the community were suggesting that Kanban is for maintenance teams or when Scrum doesn't work. But the way that we had developed it, it was more like, no, you already have a really successful team maybe, and you want to take it even further, and how can it be even better? So it came from a kind of a different perspective, I think. So that's why we started teaching Kanban maybe in a slightly different way to what the creator, David Anderson or Jim Benson and others were doing. And I was heavily involved in the Kanban community, and it took a lot of, is it 5 practices or principles, and is this principle, it became a little bit academic. And when we were out there teaching it to practitioners, we felt that there was a gap or a need that a book that's really, practical, hands-on. We don't have to convince anyone that Kanban works or is better than this or that approach or historical origins or anything, but more, okay, you're buying this book because you're already convinced and you just want to get started. So that's what we try to do with the book, and I guess that's succeeded in judging from the success of the sales of the book.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think you have pretty much achieved the objective with which you have started writing this book. See, in Kanban and in Agile as well, we talk a lot about continuous improvement, Joakim. So, what's your recommendation to inspire teams to do a little better every day? They don't sort of get demotivated and keep trying to get better.
When we talk about teams, I think to me it's back to the basics that I see. It's most teams still struggle with actually working as a team. Many of the teams that I meet at companies are more a group of individuals that get together and plan and do stand-ups, but they work on maybe their individual tasks and individual goals. So I think the first thing is how can we have more shared goals and a real sense of team in the team, where we actually help each other and collaborate, we pair on tasks, maybe we break them down and work individually, but we at least still work on the same feature, experiment, whatever work items we have. Because once you start doing that, then it will become very, very natural to have conversations about how can we do this differently? How can we collaborate better? But if you're just working individually, you don't have the same incentive. It's not as easy to reflect on how can we do things better. But once you're in a team, you can start having much more meaningful conversations. And then, really use that at every daily stand-up. Try to share things. What have I learned? What are some things I'm struggling with? And to really reinforce this sense of team and okay, let's stay and follow up after and see what I can learn from you or how I can help you. I think that really gets into the habit of doing it every day.
Right, a good camaraderie between the team members may also play a key role, right, in achieving the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So when I was introducing you, we have spoken about your tenure at Spotify and the Spotify model. So please share what this Spotify model of Agile at Scale is and why it is significant today.
Yeah. So I think that when we started sharing about the Spotify model, we had partly inspired by Toyota that would say, don't copy us, find your own way. We were kind of finding our own way and not just, okay, we're scaling and growing, so then we have to create a department and then a business unit. Instead of just doing what everyone else had been doing, we really started to think, but why? What do we actually need? What is the reason to have managers? What is the function of management? And sometimes it felt like, wow, we're just reinventing the wheel. Isn't this just a department? Isn't this just a matrix organization? But at the same time, because we spent a lot of time thinking and reflecting on these things, it meant that we came up with our solutions. We learned quickly what's working and what's not working. But unfortunately, when we wrote about it, we mostly wrote about the things that we put our own names to, the stuff that's easy to talk about, like the structures, and that we hadn't seen in other places. And that got what people were copying and actually using. Oh, we're going to call our things tribes and squads and chapters. And I felt that it was kind of missing the underlying thing about it, which is the autonomy of the team and the empowerment of the team. So that I would say that the core of the Spotify model, regardless if you call it tribes and squads and chapters and so on, is that autonomous squad, or as it's often called these days, empowered product teams, which is literally the same thing, meaning that the team is given problems to solve or goals or objectives, and then they have to come up with, how can we solve this? They have to have direct access to customers, to stakeholders, to data, and really figure out how can we make experiments and do discovery to figure out, is this a problem worth solving? Is it feasible to solve it? If it's not, okay, how can we quickly change to something else? I think that's at the core of Spotify model. And that's also why I've started taking more and more of an interest of product model and the work of Marty Kagan and Silicon Valley Product Group, because what they're doing is they're looking at all these really successful companies like Spotify, Google, Netflix, Apple, and what do they actually have in common? And it turns out that most, if not all, are relying on this concept of empowered product teams. And this is no secret. It's been known for ages and well documented and really generally considered really good practices and way of doing things, and a really innovative and engaging way, leveraging the creativity of the engineers, the developers, the people who are working every day with the enabling technology, really involving them in innovating on behalf of the customer. So, and still, even though this is well known, very few companies are using it. Very few companies are successful in doing it. And I think mainly because they are just still stuck in, well, we do it like any other company do. How did we solve it at my previous company? And you just, without really thinking about it, you're building up the same organizations time after time, and you really, oh, wouldn't it be better if the developers were focused on doing what they do best and develop? And maybe we could have a special role to talk to the customers, and you start increasing this gap in the organization between the people doing the actual work and understanding the enabling technology and others who are supposed to then figure out what should we be doing. But the trick is you really need to collaborate, everyone together. And I think that's what it's really about, and that's why it's still really applicable and current even today. What's old is, okay, tribes, squads, chapters. That's not important what you call it, but really getting to the root of this empowered product team.
All right, that sounds interesting. And I'm following up on the Spotify model question only. What's your advice to combine small autonomous teams with the strategic business alignment?
Yeah, so I think this means if we're acknowledging that we actually don't know what's going to be the right solution, even if the customers tell us that this is what we want. I don't know if you're familiar with the famous Henry Ford quote of if I would have listened to my customers, they would have said faster horses. And of course, they didn't know to ask for a car. And this is the key. We who are working with enabling technology every day, we know what's just now possible, and we need to use that to innovate on their behalf. So that means switching away from gathering requirements and talking to customers and users and then translating that into specifications and features. Because even if they ask for it, they don't know what's possible. And there's this saying that the user don't know what they want until they see it, and then they realize it's something else. So I think it's key then to start focusing on what business problem are we actually solving, what outcome are we trying to achieve. Like at Spotify, we would look at things as we want to increase the number of subscribers, of course, but that might be too far out from a team to say we don't understand how the thing that we're building can immediately affect that. Okay, so what other things? Well, we know that if a user listens more to Spotify, they're more likely to upgrade to premium and become a subscriber. So maybe that's something that we can more easily change. Can we get people to listen more to Spotify? And that's an objective so that you can then give to a team. Like Discover Weekly, that's an example that I've been coming back to because it's very well known. So is there a way you have a team working with algorithms and machine learning to come up with recommendations, but we're not really getting where we want. But if we can clearly define, okay, we have this customer segment, and we need to increase their user engagement through algorithmic recommendations. That's an objective or a challenge that we set to the team. And then they can use their empowerment and their knowledge and about the technology to come up with and try different solutions. And that means, so what leadership needs to do is focus on the objectives and the outcomes and the goals, giving the team problems to solve that are based on true insights and data, not just something that they dreamed up behind locked doors. But then they also have to create the environment for the teams, that they have a way of working, that they and an access to customers and data, so that they can actually run lots and lots of experiments and tries and things and get quick feedback on that. Because that's what means that we can have alignment on what are the goals, what is the vision, and still allow the autonomy or empowerment of the teams. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. When we talk about all these transformations and changes, how does one as a leader, Joakim, identifies that my organization or my company needs a redesign? What are some of the key indicators that tells you to focus on redesigning?
Yeah, so I think that well, if you're doing really well, then you might not have so much reason to redesign your organization. There's this saying in systems thinking that an organization is optimally designed for the output that it's currently producing. So if you're content with what you're currently doing, yeah, maybe there's no real need for organizational design. But then on the other hand, what brought us here might not be what takes us to the next level. So, and that this is a long way of saying that it's typically either this burning platform that people talk about, that we're behind, we're facing competition, we can't if we continue like this, we're not going to survive. That is a strong incentive for reorganizing your redesigning your organization, sorry. But it could also be proactive leadership, as it's called, constantly looking out and scaling. And I think that's something that Spotify did really well. We're always asking ourselves, okay, how do we need to be organized in 1 or 2 years' time to be able to stay ahead of Apple and Google, even though they're not competing at the time, like they weren't when I joined. We were still talking constantly about the threat of Google and Apple, even though we were doing well. How do we actually stay ahead? So that's proactive leadership. But then to take another perspective, I would say that we need to get away from the reorg trap of just suddenly we see that we're behind or there's a competitive threat, and now we need to do a big reorganization, all management get in behind locked doors and start creating blueprints and who is supposed to be in what organization, and then they roll it out and people are upset and there's questions and everyone feels like, let's never do this again in at least a couple of years. But if we could get away from these big bang reorgs that are management driven and rather apply the same principles really of the Spotify model or the product model to organizational design. Be clear on the vision and direction. What do we want to, what type of company do we want to be? What are our business challenges? If leadership communicates that really well, and then enlist the people who are, again, working with the technology every day, they know, because it's all a socio-technical system, right? You can't, if we reorg, we need to understand what consequences does that have for well, systems and architecture and technology and so on. It's all intertwined. So instead, we inform the teams. This is the direction, this is the organization we want to be, these are some competitive threats we see, this is what's happening, and then enlist them in continuously thinking and planning and how should we be reorganizing, and make them be more part of it and empower the teams to come up with small continuous changes. And again, that leaders are informing them with, okay, this is a new objective, this is a new goal, this is a new problem to solve, this is a challenge, how should we be reorganized? So I think that's basically enlisting the whole of the organization and using all the thinking power with people, not just to once in a while big top-down management reorg.
All right, and we all fail in some or the other experiments we do at work. Joakim, do you have any such takeaway from a failed experiment of yours which you can share with us?
Oh yeah, well, I have lots of them, but thinking of something that might be valuable in this context. Well, one thing to consider, a failed experiment. I mean, really, a failed experiment is something that we're trying to do experiment, but we fail to even execute it. But I think that maybe what you're asking is an experiment that we hope to get something, but it failed. Well, what did we learn? So in that sense, we rarely fail in experiments because we're always learning something, right? But once I was reminded that there was a time at Spotify, I wasn't directly involved in this change, but it was the IT department that was growing quickly, and people were not happy with their managers. So when they were growing, they were inspired by this holacracy organizations and reinventing organizations that you know, the ultimate goal would be to not have managers. Everyone should be self-managing, and this seems like a good point. Well, we're growing. We don't want to add managers because the managers aren't. There are too micromanaging and too controlling, and not giving the people what they want. So we ran this experiment of let's remove all the managers, or most of them. Only have 2 at the top. They would be responsible for, you know, everything that management have to do, like salaries and hiring and firing, the contractual things there are things by law that they have to do. And I've seen this, but the reason why I bring this up, because I've seen this again and again in the Agile community and outside, that the idea that, you know, oh, you just need 1 manager for 100 people because it's merely administrative. They are empowered, they should manage themselves. But what turned out in practice, that was very, very difficult, because we had the idea that they will coach each other and they will develop each other and give support. But what managers in the rest of Spotify, who was doing it really well, were doing was a lot of developing people, supporting them, and not just, you know, oh, here you have a book and you can go to a course, but truly develop people. Like, what responsibility are you taking for the psychological safety of a team? How are you making sure that you're innovating? How do you know that you're building the right thing for the customers? That kind of development. And when we did away with all the managers, there was no one to pick up those things. And it turned out that people who had said in the beginning that, yeah, this sounds interesting, I'll take a course on management and coaching, and I'll coach my peers. Once they got into it, it's very hard to combine the maker schedule and the manager schedule. Because as a maker, as a developer, for instance, you need these long periods of time that you can focus and get into the zone, while management activities is more, you know, reactive, and it's having these one-on-ones and talks, and it's chopping up your day. So I think that a key learning there is that, well, I believe that self-management and a management-less company can be possible, certainly, but it's hard. And I think what most organizations need is not fewer managers, but managers who do other things than you're used to. Not, you know, being a task manager, telling you what you do, giving you permission, finding out what you should be doing, but rather, you know, coaching you, developing you, supporting you, coming up with how, challenging you to improve your team and your way of working and so on. So yeah, sorry, I don't know if I answered your question, but that was a big experience.
You did. You did. And now, summing up the whole discussion for the long answers for this round, um, what is your advice to the progressive managers and the leaders to implement or to have a successful agile implementation?
Yeah. Well, the consultant answer is it depends, of course, but there are some general things that I think applies in almost any case, and especially if we want to start the way we want to finish, as someone put it, and meaning that if we want to introduce an agile way of working with empowered teams who are led by a vision and goals and objectives and given problems to solve, but we empower them to come up with and try different solutions themselves. If that's the way of working we want, yeah, maybe that's the approach that we should take to introduce the change. So be clear on what are we actually trying to achieve with this agile transformation or transforming to the product model or Spotify model or whatever it may be. What are the outcomes? Are we trying to be more innovative? Are we trying to get you know, more motivated and engaged people? Or You know, there are a lot of good things, and many would say all of the above. You know, but that's not good enough. You know, if you can only choose one or two, what are you getting towards? And then being clear on that, what does that actually mean in practice? What's the way that we could measure and follow that up on maybe a monthly or even a weekly basis, not yearly? Are we getting more innovative? Are people getting more engaged? Are they feeling more empowered? Whatever the goal is. And then the actual, you know, change activities in a typical change, that training and upskilling and coaching and changing structures and forums and so on. Those are only bets or experiments that we believe is going to get us to the goal. But if we're clear on the goals and say, this is what we suggest that you should be doing, that will focus people on, maybe I have a better idea, or maybe this is not working for us. And then you're giving them a mandate or empowerment to actually suggest their own alternative solutions or come up with their own ideas. But if you're only saying, you know, we're going to implement Scrum or Agile, you give them a training, say, do this, and they feel that this isn't helping us, or this isn't something that I want to do, it's easy to say, I don't want to do Agile, I don't want to do product model. But it's more difficult to say, I don't want to be more innovative, I don't want to have people more engaged. But if you say that now, if you believe that this is the wrong way to get there, great, we want to hear that, we want to learn, are there better ways? But now also the responsibility and ownership becomes on the people in the organization to come up with these ways of how can we be more innovative or get people more engaged. It's not just saying no to a method or no to a skill. But in the end, it's all about enlisting the creativity and engagement and ownership and responsibility of everyone in the organization to contribute to a change to reach a certain outcome, not to just, you know, do training or implement methods.
Right. Thank you, Joakim, for answering all these questions. It was quite insightful. We will now move on to the next round, which is going to be a rapid fire. To understand you a little better. So, are you ready?
I guess, shoot.
All right. If given a chance, which superpower you'll choose for yourself?
Well, in a way, looking at it, you know, in a selfish way, I guess immortality. It would be nice to live forever. There's so many books to read, movies to watch, and I constantly have this fear. There's so much to do, so much time to spend with family and friends, and time is not enough, and life is short. But also I have this nagging feeling of I want to see how it ends. So I want to live as long as possible, see what's next. But more useful maybe for others and making good in the world would be something like, I'm a big Doctor Who fan. I'm rewatching it again with my oldest daughter that I watched it the first time, and my youngest daughter was watching it for the first time. So the ability to time travel and teleport and travel in time to everywhere, I guess that would be another way to find out how it all ends or what's coming next as well.
Yeah, these are interesting superpowers. Yeah. So, any stupid mistake that you've ever done and you would like to share?
Stupid mistake. What's appropriate for this? I wonder, but yeah,
Maybe at your work. Yeah.
work-wise, I think it's I once you know, got really engaged in, oh, wouldn't it be great if we all set our own salaries and we're transparent about salaries and so on. And I immediately jumped on my keyboard and said, oh, hey, Agile coaches at Spotify, I think you know, salary transparency is of course something everyone wants and loves, and that we should be advocating, and I'll go first, and here's what I'm earning, and you know, you don't have to, but anyone who wants to, and I totally you know, misunderstood how this would be conceived by or perceived by others, and I didn't even consider enough the effect that my behavior had on other people, and that they now might feel compelled to disclose their salaries because I was doing it, and I think this was a very important lesson. It took me too long in life, I would say, to understand that I actually have responsibility for how my actions and my behaviors is influencing others. This was my very early days at Spotify, and I was, can't believe how immature I was in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
That felt really strange.
All right. Yeah. So, Joakim, a book or Netflix, what would be your choice?
Book or Netflix? Wow. So I love TV shows. I have all the streaming services you can imagine. I spend so much time watching TV shows and reading about TV shows, and really, really love it. On the other hand, I love books. I just finished this semester. I'm actually studying an advanced course at the university here in Sweden on modern literature. So I read 17 novels and discussed it in 10 seminars through this. So I have a very hard time choosing between Netflix and books. I love them both.
All right. And then what keeps you inspired always for work?
Yeah, I guess it's a good question for other people maybe, but to me it's like, how can I not be inspired? I love to read. I love to talk to people, to learn what they're doing. It's like, yeah, maybe I'm a little bit too optimistic and too curious sometimes, because I find almost anything inspiring. It's even if I spend time reading a bad book or watching a bad show, it can kind of be inspiring, because I come up with, this would be a better way to do this, or this is such a bad thing. It should be like this instead. So I really try to find, but I don't even have to try. I feel I find inspiration in everything really. You just have to be really open for it.
That's an interesting answer. Thank you, Joakim. And with that, we come to the last part of the interview, where I would like you to share an expert tip. We have covered various topics, right, from how you wrote the book Kanban in action, how teams should improve every day. We touched upon the Spotify model. We touched upon the advices for the upcoming leaders and the managers. And now I would like you to conclude by sharing how can a newbie practitioner keep an open mind and be ready to change, because a lot is changing at work and in personal life, in technology space, everything. How, and also the second part of the question is how leaders can ensure a progressive environment for them, because the new generation is very enthusiastic. If they get bored with one thing, they move on. So how we as an employer can keep a good environment for them?
Yeah. So to almost get philosophical on the first question, I think that you should strive to be really humble, and if you're not already humble, maybe you should pick up a book like Thinking Fast and Slow from the Nobel Prize winner Kahneman, that shows how many biases we have as a human being, or read any psychology article really. What do we know? Even the things that you believe firmly that it's this and it's like that, and no, challenge that. Be humble and realize you know so little. And even what you know is right today might have changed tomorrow. Then the solutions of today are the problems of tomorrow. So you have to keep an open mind and seek inspiration and learning from any opportunity you have. And what leaders can do, I think, is well, again, it's a theme that's I've been coming back to, but I think that the most important role of the leader in an organization is to develop their people. And that means, spending a lot of time and being really clear with the expectation that I am here to develop you as a person. And in many organizations where I see manager is mostly an administrative function or maybe a taskmaster, but very rarely, and people feel content that, oh, if I give you a budget for a course and a book on Java, you're going to be developed. But no, it's developing another human being to take responsibility, ownership, to them themselves becoming leaders in a way. So, and I think that with that expectation and that really coaching to develop people, it's automatically this will happen, that you will be ready for change and keep an open mind.
All right. And how as an employer, if you have any tips, we can make sure that they have a environment of growth and continuous improvement.
Sorry, to create an environment for.
So as how a leader of an organization can make sure that the newbies get an environment of growth and continuous improvement, and so that they can satiate the kind of enthusiasm these people have.
No, so I think it is that to regularly have meetings, maybe every week, maybe every 2 weeks, dedicated on your people's growth and development. Not giving them tasks and so on, but what are your goals? Where do you want to be in half a year from now, in 5 years from now? Even to the point where you would help develop them out of your company if that's what they want. So I think that's even if it might short term look like a bad way to run a company, I think that's what makes people actually stay with a company. I don't know if you're familiar with the expression that you're typically joining a company but leaving a manager. So many people are leaving for their bad managers. But if you have a manager you feel is so invested in your future and development that it would even recommend you looking at another position outside of the company, they're really authentically, seriously invested in your personal development. And that would ironically make you more likely to probably stay with the company than leave it. But otherwise, it's creating time and space also, not just sending people once in a while to a course and training, but encourage activities like book clubs, studying things, reading, learning from others and reporting it back, encouraging and rewarding, helping and collaborating with others to increase learning and keeping an open mindset. And that's, I think, is a thing that we did really well at Spotify, and that you can read more about on the Spotify blog on technology career steps. To actually make a career at Spotify and get higher pay and so on, you had to raise others, collaborate with others, make sure that the team is successful, not just yourself and so on.
All right, that sounds interesting. And with that, we come to the end of this discussion. It was really insightful, and it was really fun to have you with me, Joakim, for this discussion, and looking forward to learn more with you in future as well.
Yeah, thank you. It was nice to try to answer your questions. Not easy always, but hope someone's getting value out of it.
I'm sure everybody is going to enjoy this discussion and your experiences that you've shared.